Well, no, I'll just do like the intro, shiznit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and we are live. Welcome to the long-awaited episode 2 of the Power Play Perspective podcast. It's only been like 3 months since we did the last one. Very consistent upload schedule, but joined with a new co-host today. Welcome, Kazu, as we do episode 1 of season 16 of the BMHL. Lots happened since the last one, but more importantly, how are we doing today, Kazu?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. I just got some good laughs in from what just happened before we went live, and I've just
Oh
broken a
my
wall.
god, and they're breaking.
I can't. Okay, there we go.
I swear to God, I thought PSM was fucking breaking in
Dude,
again.
I thought, bro, I misclicked, but for a second I thought Hypersage was just breaking through the thing. Okay, anyway. All right, well, lots happened since the last episode. Completely have changed the teams, but I think it's worth talking about. We've had some big trades go down, especially in the past couple of days, so I think we can start there. Uh, Big one happened yesterday, but I'd say we can probably save that one a little bit. Um, let's see. I think one of the bigger trades that kind of went under a lot of people's radar was the DJ Hockey and Sports for Memes swap trade with a few other players involved. The Moose, they received Carson, hasn't played a game for them yet. DJ hasn't played a game, and CPR, who also hasn't played a game, and a future second round pick for Sports for Memes and Tie Guy. Sports for Memes, dark horse for the Vesna this season. What do you think about this trade? Who do you think won?
Definitely think that the Hawks won this trade, but I will say I don't think Sports is a Vesna, but he's definitely been carrying that team since Fish has slowed down production.
Hmm.
And yeah, exactly. I don't know why the hell Fish just decides to cherry pick every game now, but Sports is definitely being the team carry, and in my opinion, he's the team MVP. That's just me though.
I 100% agree. I mean, the team's offensive production just has not been there, but the one pretty big bright spot has been Sports for Memes. His stats aren't necessarily the greatest, but for the team that he's on, I'd say he's doing pretty well, and they have won the trade. As no one going the other way has even touched the ice yet for the Moose, who have been a dumpster fire to be polite. I think it's a good trade there for the Thunderhawks, and it's something that I think they needed. Good for them to possibly build for the future if they even stick around next season. Big rumors about that. Um, let's see. Next trade is really a one-for-one player swap, but you can, if you have any other opinions on that, you can go ahead.
Um. Okay. In my opinion, I definitely think, and this is gonna be rare, I think the Moose really won this trade
Hmm.
because like I've played in a couple of scrims with Brexy Boy. Don't get me wrong, chill guy, love the guy. He is not the best player,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have the best potential. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely think Moshi has a lot more potential, and I definitely think that she can step up and play really well for that Moose team in the future
Yeah.
if they actually decide to like get a competent lineup going. Because like their lineup right now is looking like rated. Oh wait, no, wait.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Someone, yeah, rated.
Rated
Uh,
Moshi.
I guess Moshi and I guess DJ Hockey on defense, then Maple Leafs Glazer and net.
Yeah. I mean, like,
This squad of all time.
it's it's a good trade for the Moose if they're able to keep Moshi around. Like if they're able to get an extension done, keep her around next season, and use her as that strong defensive piece. In limited action for the Knights, she's played pretty well, but I think for the Knights here, it's a pretty pointless trade. I mean, you're getting Bricey Boy. He's not going to see the ice at all on this team. They're already 5-1 with the core that they currently have. I don't see any games where he slots into the lineup, so he's not going to get any playing time, and I don't think it'd be smart for him to jeopardize his career by maybe extending there. So it's just kind of a pointless trade for them. They do get a future second round pick that probably won't turn into anything, but I guess you never know. I'd say the Moose won this trade though, if you're able to get
And
a deal done.
another thing out of the trade is what's gonna happen if Cam decides to throw a hissy fit again because the team played without him. So will
Yeah,
Bracey Boys slot in? Like Moshi played well for them.
yeah. It's just like it's one of those kind of strange situations where like you needed another fringe starter to take her place, and I don't know if you really got that, unless there's some important training going on behind the scenes. But
I rarely see the guy on. I think he was on like once,
mhm.
and then yeah. All
All
right.
right, and the last really big trade, the Mountain Q trade happened yesterday. The Minnesota Moose receive MX rated and the Gyat, a future second round pick and two future first round picks from the Halifax Highlanders for Mountain Q and a season 20 third round pick. I think we can already kind of decide who won this trade based off of last night's game. The Highlanders played with Q in the lineup for the first time and won pretty resoundingly over the Grand Rapids Thunderhawks, with him being involved in every goal. 3-point night for him. And the Moose players, one of them doesn't want to play for them, already requested out. The other one, will he even show? Who knows? The other one's excited to play there because they're in Quebec. Little do they know, just signed an extension, and the team's moving to Florida next season. So I don't know how that's gonna work, but
um, here's something I will say. I definitely do think Halifax won this trade.
mhm.
One thing is the Gyat does have a lot of potential. Why is sports making okay? Yeah. So the Gyat does have a lot of potential. Don't get me wrong. Like we played in scrims with him, and he actually did okay.
Mhm.
But like at the end of the day, he was also playing against Spray 23. But yeah. So I definitely think we won this trade. Um, some people might call it an overpay, which no, it's just not. Like Q is arguably a top 3 defenseman in the league. He's just in a horrible situation. Like
Reigning defensive player of the year from last year.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like he's a great player. He's a great defenseman. Like
Mhm.
he was just in a horrible situation with the Moose.
And it's a great
And
rental too. It's a great move for a team looking to make a big playoff push. Obviously, a lot of the pieces to get it done just kind of needed that one last piece. I mean, SCP had kind of been disappointing so far. He wasn't quite living up to the expectations, but he's still an excellent depth piece. And I think that if you were to swap the two out game to game on a game to game basis, the production wouldn't change a whole lot. But yeah, I think it's just a good trade for a win now team. And for the Moose, it's I don't know if any of those three players are going to end up playing for them. And the picks could turn into something, I suppose, but probably not.
exactly. Like I will say as well though, like SCP was gonna be our starting D man. And don't get me wrong, I still love SCP, but Q is just a better like defensive player
Right.
and does have more of an offensive like upside,
Mhm.
which is why I think if you take the starting lineup from the start of the season, where it was Husky, SCP, J4, and you compare it now, it is just a lot better. And I definitely do think the
Oh
Highlanders
yeah,
can make a solid playoff push.
it's night and day. I think. I mean, just the
Yeah.
production just has so much more potential to change. But yeah, I think that's a big win for the Highlanders. Obviously, you know what? We can't fully rule it out. Maybe these Moose players get them on a playoff push, and I'm kidding. That's not gonna happen. But
It's not
anyway,
happening, especially if the Vikings start to play again.
yeah.
It's wraps already.
Hey man, they're tanking. They're competitively tanking, except it's not competitive. But
Yeah, exactly.
not actually written down in our topics, but I did kind of want to dive into this a little bit. Is like how important is it for team owners to build that culture of where players will want to play for them? We're seeing with the Moose right now that hasn't happened. Matt hasn't really built that culture of a team where players want to go there. I mean, you're seeing like in a couple of the trades, players there are basically getting sent because there's trades or like for trade requests, and they're not looking to stick around long term. I don't know why there's a goddamn goal horn going.
Like what the hell?
Anyway, all right, there we go. Um, but like, it's kind of a weird situation for me. It's you have to build a culture that teams want to play for. I mean, if you have a look back at some of these older teams, I mean, look at the Chicago Americans. I mean, throughout their history, they've always been a hot destination for teams. The Boston Redcoats, similar situation, and the Sharks when they were around too. It's just some of these teams right now. I'm really looking at the Moose here, and that's basically it. But I mean, the Bucks too, if I'm honest, where guys just don't want to play for them, whether it be the ownership, the history, the whatever. But like, it's one of those aspects of team ownership that kind of gets overlooked in a lot of ways, but it's very important. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely do think it's important. Right? You can see like with even some of the newer teams. Look at teams like, well, obviously they aren't really like new, but look at teams like the Niagara Knights, for example. They already just have that culture where Optic can sit there and be like, okay, well, we're gonna do this and that, and we'll make the playoffs easily. So teams are more inclined to go to there. On the flip side, you can look at a team like, for example, the Highlanders. Start of the season last season, they ownership wasn't the best. Don't get me wrong, and I'll admit that.
Hmm.
But then slowly on, as the season developed and players such as myself got used to like this new league, and like got used to the other players in it, and made some switches. For example, me switching from forward to net, and us bringing in guys like SCP. You can see how the culture does change a lot more, and we went from like a team that was like second last in the league to a team that's currently second in their division, and is currently 2-3.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and look at Grand Rapids as well. I think in past seasons, honestly, from the beginning of when they started being a team back in season 5, like it wasn't really that hot of a destination. To be fair, there was 16 teams in season 5, okay? A lot of teams. So I'm not going to hold that too against them, but they just weren't really that known back then. And then they started to build their brand, won a few President's trophies in a row, and then started to become a player destination for players and was a really hot team. And then Kabufi just kind of fell off as a GM, as an owner, and then the team just wasn't really that desirable the past few seasons, especially. But now that Fish has sort of taken that dominant role in owning the team, I think that culture slowly is starting to change. But if they stick around next season, I think it's finally going to be time like get out of the rebuild stage. This franchise has been rebuilding for 4 to 5 seasons. I mean, it's at some point you do have to make a playoff push. So I think at some point you do have to start buying, start making these bigger trades, and I think Fish can do that and start to build that better culture where players will want to play for them.
Exactly. Like the thing is, don't get me wrong, I love Fish, but I don't really see him making like that huge move as of right now. I think he wants to build
Yeah.
around himself, Coops, and Sports.
Hmm.
Which, let's be real, they've all been solid, but it's 3v3 now. You need that solid wing piece,
Need a star
and
player.
Gray is just not that guy. Like if I'm Fish, what I'm looking at in the offseason, I'm looking at bringing in, maybe if he comes back, draft logical. He
Hmm.
I think he could fit in really well, but I doubt he'll come back. Maybe push for guys like a Clippe. Maybe push for guys like Cam, because we know Cam might want out. We aren't entirely sure, but he might want out of the Knights because he sits there and bitches about it every day.
Yeah.
Right? So you can may go push for a guy like Cam, and boom, you get your star player, and that team would be a lot more better than with Cam on the wing than Gray, and that's just the truth.
Yeah, they're just kind of a mushy middle team right now. They're not bad, but they just are not. They lack that star scoring player where it's like, yeah, Mysterious Fish, Coops, and Gray they're fine, but they're just not great. And I think that Gray's kind of been the weakness on that lineup. Just new players still adjusting. I totally understand that, but you know, it's not one of those moves that'll help you get into the playoffs. They will probably make it this season, but they're probably a one and done. I'm not looking at the Thunderhawks and thinking, wow, that team's going to be a real threat in the playoffs because they just don't have a real talented star scorer.
This team reminds me of last season Chicago or Halifax.
Hmm.
Right? Not a bad team, right? But you're not gonna go against a team and be like, oh no, we actually have problems here, right? And you're not gonna expect like that team to sit there and like score 4 a game or something like that,
Yeah.
right? You're not gonna expect them to win a lot of their games just because they don't have that star power.
Yeah, and I'd say honestly that's kind of what this season's Halifax looked like early on too. Started off pretty slow and like the scoring wasn't really there. Now all of a sudden you've got that safety blanket there on defense, and now the offensive players can focus more on playing offense, and it's so far worked out pretty well.
Look at guys like Emotion, for example. Came into the season, nobody really knew who he was, right? Signed here,
Hmm.
and then he's been playing really well. Or guys like Farabee, for example, nobody knew how he was going to do after this season, like before the season's draft. He comes in, In the canceled season, he dropped 2 in his first game,
Yep.
and now in this season, he's already a point per game. Right, Grant, he hasn't played a lot. Like he's busy in other leagues and he's busy in life and stuff like that. You can't really blame him, but he's been really well when he actually does show up. Same thing with guys like Husky. Nobody
Mm.
knew how he was going to play when he came to the season, and then him and Tiger have been, at least in my opinion, one of the best duos in the league.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. Um, and as we take a look at the standings, it's pretty evident who's going to make the playoffs at this point. Um, with a top two and then two wild card spot system. Um, I mean, the Americans already in the playoffs. They're probably going to be either the number one or number two seed in the whole thing. The Redcoats, they haven't played as much lately, but they're a pretty good team, as we saw from them. They stood at 3-1-1. Probably get that number two seed. They have an outside shot at the number one seed, but I think Chicago will inevitably get it. And then in the Canadian Conference, you've got the Knights already 5-1. They're pretty close to clinching. It's just the bottom feeders in that conference just haven't really played yet. And then the Highlanders just recently got going, and now they're probably a playoff lock. So, I mean, I'm looking at the playoffs. It's just a question of will the Vikings end up playing at all? If they do, I think they could pass up Hartford for one of the wild card spots and get in. But if they don't, then I think they'll just end up forfeiting most of their games.
For
And
sure.
then
And I
you're
think
sitting outside of the playoffs.
I don't even know if Hartford makes playoffs regardless. Like with the Moose's new pieces, because I will say this now when I've told Matt this, Rated is a solid player.
Yep.
Like he can play really well if he needs to. It's just a matter of will that depth show up. And I think honestly, I could see Montreal beating out Hartford for the wild card. Or if Vikings get going, then it'll be Vikings and Grand Rapids in the wild card.
Mhm.
But I don't know how the Bucks are gonna do. I don't think that they're gonna be like. I still don't know if they're entirely gonna make playoffs. I can see Montreal or Vikings passing them.
You can definitely see the Bucks though. They're not actively trying to make the playoffs. They're signing young pieces. They're building for the future, just trying to develop some of their prospects. Um, and I think it's the right move. I mean, even if they sneak in, they're not doing anything. They're just not a very good team. Atomic's been a pretty good player for the most part, but just can't really find the score sheet at all. Hypersage has been disappointing at best. Shug's been pretty good at times in net, just kind of inconsistent game to game. But overall, I mean, if they get in, they're just not going to do anything. I don't think. And if the Vikings do end up playing again, I think they're the team that could do the most damage if they sneak in. But I'm looking at a team like the Moose. If you can get in, you already have the future pretty locked up with picks and stuff. So if you're sorted with that, I'd say go for a playoff push. Maybe sneak in. I'd say that'd be a huge success for the team, considering where they're at. But I think most of the playoffs are pretty set in stone. It's just a matter of seeding.
I think I think my final standing prediction is like in the U.S. division, Chicago number one. Nothing's gonna change there.
Mhm.
Boston will be 2. Grand Rapids will be 3. And I think Boston and Grand Rapids, if it were to be a playoff series, I think it'd be a lot similar to Boston versus Chicago last season. It
Yeah.
was just blowout after blowout. And then Hartford, I don't think Hartford makes the playoffs. And then Canadian division, Niagara gets 1 seed, Halifax gets 2 seed, Charlottetown gets 3 seed, and then Montreal misses the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think that'd be my prediction.
That's valid. I mean, like the Vikings, they don't need to do that much if they do the bare minimum. They can sneak into the playoffs and possibly make some noise, but you just got to get in first. You got to play 2 games. Realistically, 3 wins is all you need to get into the playoffs, if not 2, with how bad the bottom of the league is. It's kind of interesting, actually. I feel like there's 3 tiers of teams right now. There's the true contenders, which I'm looking at. I mean, Chicago, obviously, Niagara, and I think you can make the argument for both Boston and Halifax to both be up there. But I'd put Boston up there and maybe leave Halifax out just for now. till we see what the rest of this new lineup can do. And then there's the mid tier with Grand Rapids and Halifax. Halifax obviously miles better than Grand Rapids, but and then you have the bottom tier, which is 3 teams. Kind of insane. That's almost 50% of the league. I feel like just the quality of teams overall has gone down in recent seasons. You only really see 2 to 3 contending teams anymore.
For sure, for sure. One thing I do want to say though with the Vikings is, if the Vikings don't want to play without Ivy, and I understand that he's MVP caliber, but you don't even have to play without Ivy.
Mm.
Or no, you don't even have to play with Ivy, and you could still make playoffs. This is just how bad the bottom is.
Yeah.
That's what I think they should, honest to God, do. But I don't know if they're gonna do it or not.
No, I 100% agree. But think we well, I guess we can go into playoff predictions now, since I guess that's basically next up. We've basically just talking about standings for about 5-10 minutes. So with the wild card system, it would be, what would it be? Boston,
Like,
I believe.
no, because it's top 2 in each division, and
And then yeah, the wild cards. So the 1 seed would
yeah,
get a bye. That's realistically Niagara, Chicago. Then okay. So as it's wait, hold on. Oh my god. Okay, as it stands, the Vikings would sneak in. So it would
yeah,
be the Redcoats versus the Vikings. Cup rematch from last season.
yeah.
Uh, I although I think this time it's a lot more one-sided the other way. I think the Redcoats would easily take this one. In probably, I'd say 4 games. I think that the Vikings could swing one, but I think Boston just runs away with that. What do you think?
I think, um, I think it'll actually be. It all depends if Ivy shows up or not. If Ivy doesn't show up, I got Boston in 3.
Yep.
But if Ivy does show up, and him, Packers, and Dragon actually play well, and Zebra actually decides to play with the brain,
Yeah.
I could see the series going 5, but I still think Boston wins.
Yeah.
I don't see a world where Vikings win this.
Same here. Um, I mean, like they just haven't played a lot. They're not used to the puck. Obviously, they're waiting on potential changes next season. Um, so I just don't see him going very far. Um, and then the other first round matchup would be the Grand Rapids Thunderhawks and the Halifax Highlanders, who have just played twice. Highlanders winning both, and Grand Rapids being held scoreless in both of them. I think this is a 3 game series, plain and simple, unless Grand Rapids makes another move before the deadline. I think Halifax just is better all around. But
Yeah.
what do you think?
Uh, if this is like how the current rosters are, I definitely think Halifax just 3-0s them.
He just can't score.
I don't.
Grand Rapids
Yeah,
just can't
they
score.
just can't score. Because Fish decides, I know this is going to sound weird, Fish decides to go with the cam tactic and just sit there and cherry pick, and it doesn't work on this Halifax defense.
And it
We've
also
seen this.
doesn't work with the Grand Rapids offense. Cam does it when he has star-studded players all in the
Well,
defensive zone who can pass him up.
Cam does it this season too with Eclipse and Optic. But regardless of who it is, cherry picking, at least in my opinion, doesn't work against this Halifax defense. We've seen it against every team. I don't know if Landon has done it, but I've seen Landon try to do it. It just gets shut down, regardless of who's there. Right? Cam has done it. He's tried to do it. Regardless of who's on defense, it gets shut down.
Yep.
I believe Chicago tried it for a game too, and that got shut down as well. Cherry picking doesn't work against this Halifax team because, at least in my opinion, the people who are on this Halifax team are already used to it.
Right.
Like from either separate leagues or in this league too. Like you see guys like Q, they've played against cherry pickers before. Even Optic last season, who was teammates with Q, Q would just cherry pick to him. He knows how to counter it. Guys like Husky have played against guys like Cam and other cherry pickers like Optic. They just shut it down. Like, you can't just go into this against this team and just be like, okay, I'm just going to sit at the blue line and they're going to pass it up to me. Especially if you're a team like Grand Rapids, where Coops isn't the best offensively. He can somewhat pass it up. but it's not gonna work. And then Gray can't really pass for anything.
Right.
Like, it's just not gonna work. They need to get a new system.
Yeah, they definitely do. Unless they make another big move, I wouldn't see this series going any more than 3 games. Okay. Moving on. In the second round, it would be the Boston Redcoats versus the Chicago Americans, and then the Niagara Knights versus the Halifax Highlanders. Let's start up top in the U.S. division. The Americans and Redcoats. This is a great series, but at the end of the day, I think Boston still has some big questions on their roster. Um, Obviously, the offense has been great. That's not the issue. But for me, it's going to come down to that third man as well as their goaltending. Because, I mean, Hockey Man's good. Don't get me wrong. Pretty good goalie. And, heck, if Chronics plays there too, also pretty good. But who's going to play that third man position? Is it going to be Chronics? Is it going to be Spines? I don't think the production dips off too much, but I feel like the defense is a little bit weaker depending on who's there. And with just such a strong offensive team like the Americans, who are just extremely well built all around, Arden, Kanye, Nathan, Patriot, they're at the very minimum solid at every position. And I'm just not sure if the Redcoats are. So I feel like the depth is just gonna prevail. I think the Americans will win it in 4 games. I think 4 games is a fair assessment.
I could see that happening. I think here's my problem with the Redcoats. It's not their defense. Cyrus can play great defense. We've seen it before.
Mhm.
It more comes down to how is Hockey Man gonna play, or how is Chronics gonna play? Because you saw it last playoffs. Hockey Man, don't get me wrong, I love Hockey Man. I love Chronics. They don't play well under high stress games.
Yep.
They don't play well in playoff situations. Hockey Man almost sold his team against Kanye last season. Luckily, Landon was able to score on Patriot, which is another question mark for the Americans. But the fact that they have Nathan, Patriot's not really going to face a lot of shots.
Yeah.
So I do think Americans will win. I don't know if it'll be 4 or 5 games. That's where I'm split on, because it all depends on how Hockey Man plays, and if Landon can sit there and score a lot, or Spines can score a lot on Nathan and Patriot.
Yeah, the goaltending is going to be a huge factor in that series if it were to happen. Just a matter of who plays better in the higher stress situations. Either Patriot or Hockeyman, or potentially Chronics as well. Okay, and then on the other side, it would be the Niagara Knights versus the Halifax Highlanders. This would be a pretty good series, I think. Two pretty star-studded teams would match up. One's a lot younger than the other one in terms of experience. Well, actually, I don't know, because you know I might have like 16 seasons of experience, so maybe not. That might
They
bring
also have
the
they
average up a
also
little
have
bit.
Team Cam and Zess.
Yeah, but overall, I think it'd be a great series. Two teams who play pretty differently. I'd say Halifax is a lot more defensive oriented in terms of stopping opportunities and then going on the counterattack. Meanwhile, Niagara's just a pure rush team. Um, but I think this would be a good series. Just without bias, I would take Niagara in this series, but I think it would go to 5 games, and I think it'd be a good series all around.
I think this series will definitely come down to defense, at least in my opinion, and which forward is better,
Hmm.
which forward group is better. Which based off stats, you could easily say Cam and Eclipse are better, right? Which yeah, I'd take that. I'd say it's better than Emotion and Husky,
Yeah.
but just also based off chemistry, I think it's pretty even as well. But
No, I
I
agree.
think this series could go either way. Like, you look at this team, you got great forward group on either side. I think the edge goes to Niagara.
Hmm.
For defenseman wise, I think Q is better than Optic, at least in my opinion. At
Yeah.
least from a
No,
defensive point of
I
view.
I fully agree.
And then goaltending is gonna be an insane matchup. You look at this, you got two Vesna caliber goalies going head to head, right? And
Hmm.
then Obviously, I give the edge to Niagara because that's a lot better than I am.
Right.
I could see the series going either way. I do think it goes 5, and I do think Niagara wins, but I could easily see Halifax winning as well.
No, I fully agree. And also it's like some of these players on the Knights either haven't played in too many big games or haven't played well in big games. I mean, you got to look at guys like Optic, by who's fine. Don't get me wrong, but he has the tendency sometimes to ghost in playoffs a little bit. We saw it in season 14 with the Oilers. We saw it a little bit last year with the Knights, and
Oh yeah, for
it's
sure. That was just Q carrying.
yeah, it's gonna come down to if those guys can really produce. And then you got someone like Cam, who also has the tendency to have his production stop because the cherry picking strategy doesn't work in the playoffs. And then you have a Klippe who just hasn't been to the playoffs ever. So it's just gonna. I mean, Zaz we know is a playoff performer. He comes at his best in the playoffs. That's when he's at his absolute best. And then on Halifax you have Q, who also rises to the occasion in the playoffs. And then I think I do pretty well in the postseason. And then you have, well, you and Emotion, who haven't really seen the playoffs. It's just going to come down to who can rise to the occasion and rise to the expectations and produce at that level.
We'll say this. I think Halifax has more playoff performers. Yeah, you haven't really seen me and Emotion like in this league come up in big games. You look
Right.
at leagues like BHL, me and Emotion in playoffs. Obviously, not like in a non-HL last season. I didn't do the best, but every time before that, every time I'm in the playoffs, and every time Emotion's in the playoffs, both of us play really well, and that's where our game like really takes off.
Yeah.
Like you've seen in the lower leagues in BHL, I've carried my team in the finals for Quebec,
Hmm.
right? Emotion has played really well for Jacksonville in that one series, or in that one playoff run. So I do think Halifax is better playoff performers. I just don't know like how me and Emotion are gonna translate to playoffs in this league.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. All right. So in this hypothetical, Niagara moves on, and that would set up a final matchup of the Chicago Americans and Niagara Knights, the two respective one seeds in the conferences. But honestly, I feel like this series is more of a mismatch than the previous one we were just talking about. I feel like this one, Niagara would be a lot more favored because I feel like with this team, I honestly I think the offense is just better for Niagara. Chicago has been good, but I haven't seen like that same level of production necessarily from them. It took a while for Kanye to get going. He's going now, right? But it took him a while to really start to get going. Arden we haven't seen in the postseason really, and then on the back end you have Nathan, who's good in the playoffs defensively, but he just doesn't provide that offense. And I think Optic's just a better offensive defender than Nathan. And then goaltending wise in the postseason, Zaz is a clear, just he massively clears Patriot. And I think Patriot's a good goaltender, but he disappears in the playoffs. So it's I don't know, it's a weird kind of situation, but honestly, I would not be surprised if Niagara won this in 5, 6 games.
Yeah, I think this series goes 6. But I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think Chicago does prevail,
Hmm.
just because Cam is known to get shut down, and same thing with Optic. They're known to get shut down by really good defensemen.
Yeah.
Like they will not score whatsoever. You saw it in season 14 of BMHL. Cam could not score for the life of him on Q. Like Q was just shutting him down. And then you look at it like Q was shutting down that cherry pick and everything. You look at Optic in season 14. Nathan shut him down, and then season 15 when they played the Vikings, Dragon just shut down Optic too. So you got to look at it like this: these players on Niagara, they're good. Don't get me wrong, but they get shut down so easily by like at least top 4 defensemen.
Right.
If you were to take Nathan against any of these guys and say, okay, well, who are they going to score? Are they going to score on Nathan and Patriot? You name a player on that team.
Mm.
I'm saying Nathan and Patriot clear every time. regardless of how the goaltending is, Patriot is just not gonna face shots in the series.
Right. No, I definitely see that, but I feel like it's less about for me at least, it's less about the talent of the players and more about the schemes that they run. And I feel like that just pound the rock kind of offense that Niagara runs would be enough to overwhelm Chicago at points. And when they've gotten so used to, not seeing a ton of shots in the postseason, especially with the route that they'd take here, I think it's it could take them by surprise a little bit in the early games. But I think their regular season matchup, which is going to be one of the final games of the regular season, most likely, is going to be a huge indicator on what would happen if these two end up matching up in the playoffs. I think it'd be a great series, but I feel like just the schemes that they run would kind of not necessarily overlap each other, but one would just be outright better.
For sure. I Yeah, once again, I could see the series going either way, but I do think Chicago will come out of it
Yeah.
as a winner. Just because of their talent and the fact that Kanye and Arden has I've refed a couple of the Americans games. They can play very well together. I see them passing to each other all the time. I don't know if Optic's ready for that.
Yeah.
And guys who are known to not play like the best defense in a Clip A and Cam and are much more known for their offensive game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they're going to play against a team like that. Right? But,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I can agree with that for sure. I think it'd be a pretty even series. But I think that's all we got for the playoff predictions. But now I guess we can talk about the awards. It's a very interesting award. Like, not necessarily class, but like race, I'd say. Because, I mean, there's a bunch of candidates for it. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of the stats this season from players are extremely inflated. I mean, from just playing dog shit teams. Like the Moose, the Bucks, the Thunderhawks. Now I wouldn't say the Thunderhawks are as bad, but still, just saying like they.
Bucks and the Thunder. The Bucks and the Moose, 100%.
Yeah, I mean stats have just gotten inflated to the point. I mean, what there was a 12-0 game, there was a 9-0 game, an 8-0 game, another 8-0 game. It's just, man, how do you decide? Like it's gonna be very hard to decide like a most valuable player, just because 3 of the teams have played the worst teams in the league and the other ones haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, it. I feel like somebody like Landon could be a big dark horse because he hasn't necessarily played as many of those bad teams, but he's also produced against the good teams and stuff like that. But I honestly have no clue who's gonna win the MVP just because I don't know. I feel like a lot of the stats are inflated and against teams who haven't won a game.
Yeah, I think, at least in my opinion, I think Landon is probably going to win MVP. Because guys like Clip A, Cam, and Kanye, and Arden even, I've seen their games. I've refed a couple of their games. They just farm the bad teams like horribly. Don't get me wrong, a Clip A can show up against the good teams. We've seen it all season, right? Cam can somewhat show up, not like really great. Like you saw, he got shut down by SCP in the Halifax game, where he only had like an assist when he's known to be a goal scorer.
Right.
But I definitely do think it will go to Landon just because he's produced very well against those good teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think MVP is gonna be Landon.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Vezina race is a lot more interesting though. I think that's gonna be the big award because you've guys like Zaz, Patriot, Chronix, you, Sports for Memes even as a dark horse, who all just have a good shot at winning it. It's just gonna depend how things go down this last little stretch of games here.
Sure.
But I mean, the rest of the awards, like, I mean, the 5th man of the year, who really cares? It's probably someone on Halifax, realistically, just because there's like 6 players who have played. Dedication to hockey, who cares? Who cares? Best GM, I mean, like either Kazu, Rockwat, Optic, probably. Best playmaker, it's just the most assists, really. So, we won't really know. Best goalie tandem, um, who wins best goalie tandem? That's actually an interesting one.
Just depends.
Yeah, it depends who really plays.
Now that goalie is back, we low-key could probably switch and it really wouldn't do anything
Hmm.
because we're playing bad teams.
Yeah.
Right, so you could go in that, I could go in that. It doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
But if assuming we don't do that, it's probably going to go to Minty and Shug, just because
Yeah,
they've
just
played
because they've actually
somewhat
split
well.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I think President's Trophy, it's gonna go to Chicago or Niagara. Really, whoever wins that regular season game, I think will get it. Um,
Yeah.
Best team player, who cares?
Well, yeah,
It's
TB.
whoever's nice to people. Uh,
Probably SCP
yeah, yeah, honestly. Rookie of the year,
or
uh, Moshi maybe, Arden,
well,
one of those guys.
is Arden really a rookie or not? Because I don't know.
He's eligible. He's not like really considered a full rookie, but he is eligible
Oh,
for it.
oh, okay. So it'll probably go to Arden, but candidates could be like, Emotion is technically a rookie.
Hmm.
Guys like Emotion, Arden, and Moshi.
Yeah.
Probably it.
Best defenseman, I think it comes down to Nathan, Q, and Optic.
I think it'll
Realistically,
probably go to Nathan. Just
or
like shut
actually,
down wise,
and
it'll go to
Cyrus really,
Nathan.
and Cyrus. Cyrus can
Yeah,
absolutely be in that conversation.
I think it'll probably go to Nathan though.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. They'll probably have like one or two goals against realistically throughout the whole season.
Yeah,
So it's hard to really go against that. Most goals, obviously, it's probably going to be one of the big guys, Kanye or whoever.
either Kanye or Clippe.
Yeah. And then MVP, like I said, I have no clue. I mean, it could go to anyone. It just kind of depends who produces in the big games. Like, for example, that I keep bringing it up, but the Knights Americans game, final week of the season. Like, I mean, it's a big game for MVP.
Sure.
Someone pops off that game. That's could be big.
I don't think anyone will really like pop off. I think honestly, I do think that the MVP is going to go to Landon though, just because he does perform against big teams. I think I can easily see just like Chicago versus Niagara being like a 2-1 game.
Yeah.
Nobody goes off. Like Kanye gets a goal, Arden gets a goal,
Hmm.
Clippe gets a goal, Cam gets a goal. One of those.
Yeah, I fully
I
agree.
don't think I don't think they'll pop off
I think
necessarily.
I think awards are just kind of weird. They'll be weird this season. Um, just I think there will be a lot of arguing and, well, yeah, he should have won this. But that
Yeah.
happens every season. But so I think that's it for all the written topics. I do want to add
Well,
like one last thing.
there's comeback player of the year as well.
Oh yeah.
That's
Honestly a Clippe. It's probably a
yeah.
Clippe.
Like,
I,
I
I
had
mean,
like
dude was
3 points
fucking god
last
awful
season.
last year, and now he's top 3 in points, I believe. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Anyway, last like added topic, I guess. Um, so I'm interested in your opinion on this. Uh, the league might expand to 10 teams next season, of course, and then it also might be changing the puck again. But what are your thoughts on this?
Just gonna. I could see a team being like, what's it called last season, in the cancel season, like the Badgers last season. I could easily see a team just doing that again,
Yeah.
or like the Knights. I mean, I think I like the expansion. If it goes up to 10 teams, I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
Right, because obviously teams are gonna get replaced.
Right.
Right, because we don't. Thunderhawks are probably gonna stay.
Vikings are
Moose are
gone.
going to the Venom. Vikings are just gone.
They're getting axed.
Fish told me he's probably getting a Toronto team. He was
Yep.
begging for me to go there.
Hmm.
Halifax is staying. Americans are staying. Right? Like
Yep.
Bucks are probably staying. Like a lot of these teams, I don't know. My only problem with these teams is like, how are they gonna? Are one of them gonna be like the? What was it? It wasn't the Knights. It was the Spartans and the Badgers.
Hmm.
Are teams gonna just do that and just not show up to games, or play games just to have like the worst team in the league
Right.
because they didn't care to draft or sign anyone?
Hmm.
And that's all I'm worried about for next season.
Yeah. So the only teams leaving, there's only two of them. It's the Redcoats and the Vikings. Just Landon's stepping down from ownership and no one else wants to take it, but realistically, Cyrus is just going to probably come in, bring the Bobcats back, and then the problem solved. For the Vikings, it's a little bit more interesting. I mean, Tien Vols is pretty likely going to bring back his Nashville team. And then the Sharks are coming back, so then that just leaves one more open spot, unless you're wanting to get rid of another team. But realistically, I don't think any of the other teams have really deserved to get, just outed.
Yeah. I think Grand Rapids will stay. I don't think they'll get replaced. I think the 10th team is going to be Toronto with Fish. Because I know Fish really, he really wants to own his own team.
I honestly disagree. I feel like Grand Rapids will get, quote unquote, axed, but I think Mysterious Fish will just take solo ownership of the team and just Kabufi gets fucking thrown out to the street. Who cares? Because he hasn't really done anything. And then that just leaves an open spot. Clipe's hinted at wanting to own and possibly bringing the Quebec Remparts back, which honestly I think would be sick. One of the league's OG teams.
I think an ownership duo that might be getting split up. I think me and Spray are probably going to get split up next season.
Yeah.
Because, Spray has done fucking nothing this entire season. I've done everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, the ownership duo is probably going to be, me and SCP.
Yeah.
I think that's how it's going to go because I don't know any other team that wants SCP, and I know SCP probably wants to extend here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing, ownership duos becoming more and more popular. More teams are doing it. Grand Rapids is doing it right now. Halifax has done it for a couple seasons. The Sharks are going to be doing it next season. Nashville could as well. And then, it's been working for the most part.
Romeo and Tien, yeah.
Oh, hell no. That's the ownership group of doom and despair.
Romeo's not coming back. Tien and Mallards is going to be the ownership.
Ew, nightmare blunt rotation.
Oh god.
Oh god. But never, dude, Patriot and ownership in the same sentence.
Hey, he got Kanye for the Reapers last season.
He did. And then he left.
And then he left fucking 5 minutes later because he got clowned for it.
Exactly.
And then the guy went into my DMs crying about it. I told him, bro, just relax. What do you mean? Just make good moves. It's not hard. But either tank or build around your current team.
I mean, yeah, it's been an interesting season. I think next season has the potential to be a lot better, though. I mean, I don't think I'm the only one to say this. I feel like, obviously, you haven't been here too long, but I'd say that the league has been steadily declining over the last couple seasons, but I think next season it has the potential to get back to its former glory.
For sure.
I mean, but I think that's all I got. If you have anything you want to add or go over.
Yeah, guys. A motion for Rookie of the Year. Woo.
Oh, hell no. Well, actually, maybe. I don't know. Depends.
Yeah, don't worry. Arden's just a bum, I swear.
Don't worry, guys. He's going to get 0 points in his last 3 games.
Yeah, guys, don't worry. Emotion's going to score 10 a game. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm. Never know, I guess.
Weirder
things have happened. But, yeah, I think that's all we got. Appreciate you watching if you did. If not, go fuck yourself. But we'll see you next